Now you know inflation is killing your retirement dead. The real rate of inflation, well, it just won't let you keep up or make a profit. You need a different approach. Precious metals, not Robin Hood or stocks that can crash and leave you losing money. An IRA or 401k with Noble Gold is the answer. And this month, Noble Gold is gifting a genuine, rare Carson City minted Morgan silver dollar with every qualifying IRA or 401k. Find out more at www.noblegoldinvestments.com. Good afternoon. I'm still reporting on the coup. It will come as no surprise to this audience to say that the left still controls the levers of media power in the United States. The crisis along the southern border is the best recent example. You could call it a catastrophe, debacle, crisis, disaster, fiasco, or your choice of word that means things are really messed up. The White House calls it a challenge, which is a great word for the White House because challenge has none of the negative connotations of disaster, catastrophe, or even crisis, which is pretty mild. A challenge doesn't mean you made any mistakes, just that it's a difficult situation, not a more accurate description, which would indicate a difficult situation of your own making. Demonstrating just how much power the Democrat Party has over the mainstream media, the term the Associated Press is using for the situation at the border, where the facilities for children are operating way over capacity, where the number of people crossing the border illegally, which means not at a border crossing, is increasing exponentially. The word that AP uses for that is challenge, exactly the same word the White House uses. The Border Patrol is currently housing over 15,500 unaccompanied children, and that is a challenge, not a crisis. We were not in on the Zoom call, and maybe it was just a group text message that went out to all of the top news editors and producers in the country that said the current situation at the border is to be called a challenge. It's incredible how low the news business has fallen. There was a time within human memory when an edict from on high like that would have resulted in writers and editors across the country using any word but challenge. The big guys would have all sent teams of reporters and editors to the border to write long, detailed exposés of just how terrible the situation was, because they were not going to be told what to write or what word to use to describe a situation. But those editors and producers are all dead now, or desperately trying to make it to retirement, and at this point in their career would report that the emperor's clothes were gloriously beautiful if that is what it took to keep their jobs. It's a sad day when the White House can dictate what words reporters use in what is supposed to be a free and independent press. And it's even worse than that because the Biden administration is refusing to allow reporters or news photographers to visit the sites and see for themselves what's happening. The handy all-purpose excuse being used is COVID-19. It isn't safe. So, of course, the Biden administration is only thinking of the safety of reporters and news photographers who sometimes ply their trade in combat zones where the danger is not from possibly catching a disease, which has about a 98% recovery rate, but from bullets and explosives. Having some bigwig Democrat choose the words that will be used to describe the catastrophe at the border is very similar to calling Republican assertions about the irregularities in the 2020 election the big lie. That's the terminology from on high once again that went out in response to any question about the validity of the 2020 presidential election. And that is how the mainstream media and Democrats dutifully refer to it even today. This despite numerous ongoing state-level investigations. For example, just yesterday, the New Hampshire Senate voted 24-0 to demand the state attorney general to investigate at least one election day race. That bill, SB 43, then passed the House Election Law Committee by a 20-0 vote. No one along the line of this bill has voted against it. Remarkably, once signed by the governor, the state has just 45 days to do a forensic audit of the voting machines and ballots. Who knows where that's going to take us, but you can be sure you won't see it on the MSM, Blackout City. But put this in perspective. Just 5 years ago, the situation was completely reversed. In 2016, the Democrats were certain that there was no way that Donald Trump could have defeated the smartest woman in the world, Hillary Clinton, in a fair election. They claimed, with no real evidence, that the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians and stole the election. Countless articles were written about Trump-Russia collusion. The result of that was a 2-year investigation by a hand-picked special prosecutor, Robert Mueller, to prove the Russian collusion. People who had worked for Trump were arrested in the middle of the night by FBI agents with drawn guns. Thousands of interviews were conducted, and the result was that Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller found no evidence of the Trump campaign colluding with the Russians. You could legitimately call the Russian collusion story the big lie, but the mainstream media did not. After the Mueller report came out, the MSM pretended they had never written all those stories about Russian collusion and moved on. But the point is that there was an investigation because Democrats were convinced that it was not a fair election. In the 2020 election, the roles are reversed. The Republicans are convinced that there was no way that Sleepy Joe Biden, who barely held a campaign event and to my knowledge did not hold one with over 12 non-media in attendance, could have beaten President Donald Trump, who is immensely popular with his base of tens of millions of voters. There is no investigation. If you even mention that there were some really strange occurrences on election night, then you are ridiculed by the mainstream media as promulgating the big lie. And if you mention certain words that indicate you may believe the election was not free and fair, you are removed from social media. And that threat continues to this day, to the point where this channel is now at risk for even allowing this, the mildest of criticisms of the process. What a world has this become? Does anyone in the country think that a special prosecutor is going to be appointed to investigate the 2020 election? But wouldn't that be a great solution? There is certainly much more evidence of voter irregularities in the 2020 election than there was Russian collusion in the 2016 election, which was in the end zero. If Joe Biden really wanted to unite this country, he would insist that a special prosecutor be appointed to investigate the 2020 election and to prove that he's the legitimate president. But he doesn't. In fact, quite the reverse seems to be his administration's goal. One of the reasons that Trump didn't attempt to stop the appointment of the special prosecutor and fully cooperated with the investigation was that he knew that he had not colluded with the Russians, and in the end a fair investigation would have come to that conclusion. But remember, that was back in the Stone Age when the words fair investigation meant something. The investigation of Trump took a lot longer than Trump thought it should have, and used far more hardball tactics, but in the end, Trump was right and Mueller was man enough to admit it. Why is it that not only is a special prosecutor not being appointed, it is not even being considered? Where are the editorials demanding a special prosecutor to clear up legitimate questions about the election? You won't see any space devoted to that question in the mainstream media today, even though everyone claims to want free and fair elections. If the left were serious about it, they would be demanding that a special prosecutor be appointed so that he could prove that the election was free and fair and no more corrupt than your average election. I'm still reporting from just outside the citadel of world freedom. Good day. Every doctor on TV says that we all need to boost our immune systems, and STEM Enhance does that in a unique way by increasing blood levels of your own adult stem cells, the backbone of your immune system, by over 30% in just 1 hour. Click on the link in the description box below for details.